Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. Let's get started with our hosts, Linda McKissick and Dana Gentry.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. I'm Linda McKissick.
And I'm Dana Gentry.
Sorry, Dana, there. I almost forgot for a second who I was. So before we get started, anything new with you? I see you so often now. I very seldom get anything new other than I'm getting ready, getting organized, and getting going.
I know.
Getting my crap back together.
That's the story of my life. No, really just I've been trying to really gear up and invite as many people as we can to Dallas in February, and excited to see. Did you see Simon Sinek is going to be this guest speaker?
I did. I'm so excited. I want to hurry and finish his book before I listen. I'm super excited.
It's so good. Yeah, The Infinite Game. I cannot wait. I'm like pumped that he's going to be there. So that's awesome.
Yes. And I'm getting geared up. I've got a session I'm going to teach that's going to be about, how to build a big business by following the MREA models. We've had that conversation in our top 100 lately, a lot about, how teams are getting off track and off the rails, and they're not making any money.
Yeah.
Because they got their whole model out of whack. They're following each other instead of following the MREA model. So I'm really excited about that. I'm not excited. I am procrastinating about putting all the information together. But I am a procrastinator, and there's nothing like a deadline that motivates me more. So I'll get it all put together before family reunion, and it'll be good.
Yeah.
But I have to think about it for a while, and then somehow when I'm sleeping, great ideas will come to me. So I do better if I can get the idea and have a couple of days or a little bit to kind of mull on it, and then all of a sudden I'll start finding the information and the things I need for the class. And then I heard you're doing a session.
Yes, I am doing a session, and I'm actually super excited. This one is Build a Leadership Career Worth Having, from the start to the top at Keller Williams. So that'll be a great one. I'm super excited about that.
Awesome. Yeah, that'll be good. I hope yours is in the same time as mine so I can come.
I know. I know.
All right, so let's just jump into it. We actually have a great question that I want us to kind of talk about. So I'm just going to read the email if that's okay.
Yeah.
And this one says, "Hi, Linda and Dana. I've been listening in since day one, and I look forward to it every week." Which, thank you so much. We appreciate that. I've yet to be inspired to ask a question, and now here I am, coming from contribution with my question. Many of my married friends are finding that their spouse is not on board with their real estate career. I am not personally married, yet I feel so much for them and how tough that would be. I know it has been touched on before because I remember Dana mentioning how important choosing your spouse in hindsight 2020, especially in our career. Some things I've heard is spouse wants me to get a real job. I've outgrown my spouse because of KW's training, mindset, and culture. Not getting support with my kids and all the domestic duties that a woman has to do. These things can't happen in any marriage. These things can happen in any marriage, and yet marriage is called life in real estate. So I think digging deep into this now before a shifting market would be a super beneficial, because from what I've heard, it's only going to get tougher. Happy holidays and a prosperous new year. So she sent us this around the holiday time. So I love this question. I do believe whether you're in real estate or not in real estate, this can be a dilemma. I remember having a group of painters, really like very successful painters, like house painters, that someone referred to us to come to our strategy room. And we were talking about, they all have great cash flow businesses, but they don't have wealth. And more than one said, well, what do I do about my spouse if they don't think the same way? So I think this is very common, whether somebody in your family either doesn't understand the way you are, or you don't get relief from the other duties you have to do while you're trying to build this business. So let's jump right in. And what would you say, Dana? I want to first give a disclaimer. Dana and I both have had a divorce. So I am not a proponent of divorce. However, I have had one. I'm not also someone who condemns anyone who has had one, because I personally have had one. But I have had a lot of years to reflect back on it. And also, even my own current marriage, there are going to be times when you don't see eye to eye. And even Jimmy and I have been married 38 years, and it could not be happier. It just gets better and better. And I have to be honest, there was a moment when divorce was on the table. And so I I think that people have to understand, as bad as anything can feel or seem, it can get resurrected and it can be amazing. And so, I think you pull out all stops and try everything before you give up. But I also think there may be some ways that you can maybe get that person to buy into what you're doing. So what would you say, Dana?
Yeah, well, first of all, I felt like kind of like a deep, heavy question, which I appreciate. And I think it's so important. And, I was actually kind of trying to reflect when we got this question and we talked about doing it on here or answering it on the podcast. I was trying to make a little list of things because obviously, no one's perfect, but Jesus, I always say. So there's going to be times in everybody's lives where, just like you said, things are going to happen and things can get resurrected. And I also believe that, when you have really clear expectations and great communication, that helps a ton. So when I was thinking back, I kind of came up with 4 things that I felt like, just from past experiences and going into the future, because the things I heard her say were spouse not on board, certain spousal duties, if you will. And I think sometimes we still get in this mindset of the women are supposed to do certain things and the men are supposed to do certain things. And that doesn't usually work very well with me in my world. And then outgrowing the spouse. So the very first thing that I wrote down is, I feel like both people have to be on the same page with how learning based they are. Meaning, if somebody's super learning based and they are constantly growing and constantly learning, and maybe their spouse isn't, or the other person isn't, to me, that's an area of a spot of weakness that something could get in, and, then that could cause a riff or a fight. And so I think with both people having to be learning based, to me, is super important. And then with that, I said, working on a growth plan together. And that's something, honestly, I did not do previously, that I think is so important. Because if you don't have clear expectations about where you and your significant other each want to go and what each of you want to do, whether that's things separate or whether you're in the same industry together, when you don't have those expectations and you don't have the communication around it, I think that's when one person does their thing, the other person does their thing, and then it's kind of like you just hope that they're somehow going to mesh and everything's going to work out. You know what I mean? So I think being learning based and having that, working on a time to do a growth plan together, to me, is really important. Even after church today, Adam and I went to lunch and we sat down and, we were talking about the common question that everybody asks us. He lives in one state, I live in another state. So how in the world is that even going to work? And it was funny because we were talking through it and we actually were making a little list at lunch just around, okay, if this is our growth plan, then we got to put in the work to make it work. You know what I mean? So it's coming up with things that are important to him and are important to me, so that one of us isn't outgrowing the other, or one of us isn't not on board with what the other one wants to do.
Yeah, so true. And something that comes to mind to me is, I remember, because I typically, Jimmy's learning based, but to be honest, I'm like a freak at it. And so I drag him into more stuff. And I remember at one point I said, I don't want to feel like I'm making you go to any of these things or whatever. But I love the fact that he learns different things than I learn. He's way smarter book sense wise. And so he will hear things and understand things that I don't really get. And then I have gifts and things that I get at a different level. And I'm once I grab something, I run with it.
Yeah.
But I remember him saying to me, I said, then why do you do it? If it's not as important to you or whatever, why would you do it? And he said, well, I don't want you to outgrow me. And so the truth is, that may not always be the case with the relationships. The spouse may not be worrying about that. So one of the things that I wrote down is, I don't think you have to actually be the same, but I don't think you have the right to hold the other person back. And so what I would say is, because you love who you love, right? And so, if Jimmy didn't want to do any of the things that I want to do, I would be sad about it, because I love that he's there and we can have conversations about it. But I also know marriages that are great marriages that he does or she doesn't, and they work out fine. So I think the key is if someone's trying to hold you back from doing what who you are and growing, and if growing's important to you, then I think the main thing is you have to you have to have a conversation around that. And I'm going to tell you something. One of my favorite parts of when I teach Fierce Conversations is when we get to the idea that the conversation is the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
See, we assume, and especially women are bad about this. I used to assume Jimmy could read my mind if I even hinted at something, and I'd be mad that he didn't read my mind. Like I said, I want to stop at that exit and eat, and you didn't even stop. And he's like, you didn't say that. I'm like, I hinted, And so I think we tend to expect them to they must know or whatever. And I think they're kind of oblivious sometimes. So I think you have to have the conversation. And then what they do with it, it's kind of like what Fierce says. Your only obligation is to have the conversation. You can't be attached to how they accept it or whatever. And so I think, again, going to the 3 clear examples of where it's causing you hardship in your life, that you're trying to build this real estate business, and, whether, they still expect their dinner on the table at 5 o'clock. I remember Keller saying years ago, one of the reasons he put that in Keller Williams, a husband and wife only pays 1 cap, is because he felt so bad for the women that would try to work all day and then go home, and the husband would say, that's fine, you can do that real estate deal, but I want dinner on the table at 5 o'clock,
Mm-hmm.
And so he felt so bad for that he wanted to encourage spouses to work together, because I think, like you said, either they have the same plan in their work. Because the reason I love like even a model and system like the MREA is because when teams and people start fighting about something, you can just point back to the model. It's so funny because I remember times in my marriage when it was either a parenting thing we didn't agree on, or it was a business thing we didn't agree on. And I always had 2 people that I would say, well, here's the thing. I could be thinking wrong on this, but here's the deal. If it's a pastoral thing, let's call our pastor, and whatever he says, I'll buy into. And then I would say the same thing with, business with Gary Keller. Let's call Gary and see what he says. And so even if you had a couple of really solid mentors or people that if you just 2 couldn't agree, then somebody who's more level-headed could step in and kind of help you see it from a different space. But I think you have to have willing and able people that are willing to admit that maybe they're wrong on something, or maybe, and then I also think you find what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can go ahead and be successful, with the house duties. Then I would make it a goal that I am able to hire somebody to do it. If I literally just could not, have the conversation and get my spouse to participate, which I just can't even imagine that. I'm like you. I mean, we don't decide that these are womanly duties and those are manly duties. We just don't do that. Although I do expect him to drive when we go to Branson. That is a manly thing. Drive. And so there we go. You know what I mean? So, maybe that's double standard.
Mine is pumping gas. Adam will tell you, like, my love language is if I get in my car and the gas tank's filled up. That's it. That's like all that I need, because I hate to pump gas. It takes too long. If it's cold outside, then as soon as you're in a hurry, your zip code doesn't work or something when you have to punch in. I'm like, no, just fill up my gas and I'm good to go for the rest of my life.
That's funny. Well, I'm sure Adam would say that ain't quite all you need, but that's okay. That's
right.
An important one. That's important. Mine is starting the car when it's cold. I'm like, oh, can't you go start the car just a little bit before we get out there? But
he's
anyway,
got it easy now with remote start.
No, we started remote and we don't even know how to use it. That's a whole nother conversation. But so I just think, if you can get on the same page and have the same goals, get them to Quantum Leap. If you can get your spouse to Quantum Leap, I think that's a huge place. And the one that said go get a real job, you got to reflect yourself and say, why are they thinking this is not a real job? Do they see you not treating it as a real job? Do they just don't understand what the possibilities are? I just think it's easier to let someone experience something and self-discover than it is to try to, especially when it's a spouse. That's why I always say spouses can't coach each other or mentor each other, or hold each other accountable. So if you can get them to either another couple, have them talk to another couple, so that maybe they can see it from a different angle. Maybe you could have a conversation and say, what part of this doesn't feel like a real job to you? Maybe you could follow me around for a week. I don't know. There's so much more to it, because I always say there's 3 sides to every story. And sometimes we're blinded to our own piece of the story that we're contributing. So, maybe just having them, just having a conversation and just say, I'm just curious. And if you're not making any money, then show them that you are on the right path to making money, that you're getting there, you're almost there, or what you're committed to do. I remember business psychotherapists telling us before, and maybe if you've got a spouse that is afraid of risk, maybe you sit down and say, how much money would make you feel okay so that I could take some extra risk? So just having the conversation around it, to me, is so crucial. It's the hardest part, because I think you have to be willing to see your own DNA and what's going on. But I think those honest, heartfelt conversations are the best way to move anything forward, so it just doesn't stay completely stuck. What would you say?
Yeah, I agree with all that. And, you said one thing that I was thinking, self-reflecting wise, and if I'm pointing thumbs instead of fingers, in my previous marriage, I never really asked him to come to stuff or to be included in anything, because I didn't think he would like it anyway,
Yeah.
But I just think doing some of those things together and both people being inclusive on the things that they're learning. And, one person may love to go take a financial class and the other person may love to go take like a quantum leap type class or whatever that is, but just being able to do those things together, because exactly what you said earlier, you're going to hear different things. But that also made me think of something else that I think is so important when it comes to this kind of topic is I do really believe that both people need to have the same financial thermostat or be pretty close to that.
Yeah.
And because I think if one person's financial thermostat is, I want us to be millionaires, and the other person's financial thermostat says, I'm good with if we make $100,000, like that to me is off somewhere. And it kind of reminds me of what Gary said in that meeting, where there's two different types of people. One person wakes up every day and says they want more, and the other person says, I'm good with what I have, I just want to protect it. And neither's right or wrong. And It's the same thing with the financial thermostat. I don't think either's right or wrong, but I think if you're on the polar opposite ends of the spectrum on that, then that could be where someone may say, get a real job, or, they could not be on board with that, or whatever that looks like. But I think you have to be in the realm of knowing, okay, we both kind of have the same financial thermostat for where we want our future to be.
So true. And I think so many times, so many of us enter marriages long before we have any of that figured out ourselves. I mean, Lord knows I had no idea,
Yeah.
When I got married the first time, that I would have such a hunger for growth and for, just waking up every day and, never settling and just wanting to continue to grow and, give more value and just accomplish more. And so I think, and like she said, she's not even married yet. So I think part of what we need to teach young women and young men is, try to find marriages that are what you feel like is a good marriage and what makes that a good marriage. Have some good understanding before you enter this about, talk to people who are married and just say, here's where we're the same and here's where we're opposite. What am I not seeing? What am I too young and too immature to see where this might cause a problem later? And could we address it now? It's like you hearing somebody getting into a marriage and then they figure out after they're in the marriage, one of them doesn't even want to have kids and the other one does. It's like, wow,
right.
How did somebody miss that part? I think we're so young and immature sometimes ourselves, and so not clear about who we are and what our gifts are and what we want to accomplish. And so I think it's real easy to get into situations like this, and then all of a sudden you're knee deep. But again, I think anything can be resurrected. And I'm just, I look back on the moments when, Jim and I seriously thought about maybe it wouldn't work. And I'm so thankful that we stuck it in and we fought it out, because I can't imagine. I mean, I feel so blessed in that arena. And, he's still, even though we're alike in a lot of things, he's still not as hungry for that learning. He's just as happy to sit down and watch TV, and, instead of, I just remember there are moments in my marriage when I found things and I just let them gnaw at me, or I just picked at them. Instead, I'm like, okay, that's okay. can you do it with earplugs so I can hear my podcast? Or I don't want to listen to the news all the time. There's those kind of things that I think you're just going to have certain areas that are just going to be like that. And you have to say, am I really looking for things, or could I have the conversation that might clear some of this up? And I think, could we build a plan together that we both see as important? And this is the part I feel like I can contribute. And this is the part, and maybe they impart security that you can't give because you're in this business. A lot of times it's the difference in behavior. Like you said, it's that fear of, maybe not necessarily being growth minded, or, they need more security. And so they don't want you doing something that's risky, like sell real estate 100% commission.
Yep.
And you could also show each other the value of, a security person is going to be able to bring things to the table that I can't bring because I'm 100% commission. I got to get out there and get after it every day. And I love that.
Mm-hmm.
But I also can bring a bigger upside, or maybe I can bring the wealth building side because we'll have extra money to do those things. So I think just getting on the same page and getting the same goal plan. And again, I don't think people spend enough time saying, if I keep doing life this way for 10 or 20 years, what do I have?
Yeah.
So risk has to come into play somewhere. And I think a lot of times I always think about, people are coming from their fear and their limitations and their limiting beliefs. And that doesn't make them right or wrong. It just makes them where they are.
And I think a lot of that has to do with even how they were raised. So two people may have two completely different upbringings that may be having them, think different thoughts. And I was actually just thinking too, one of the things that Adam and I did super early on that was really good for us was we said, because it was important to me, kind of talking around the growth plan. I remember us talking about one time I said, we need a clear expectation on what percentage of the total income would we feel like we each wanted to contribute that we would feel good about. And especially sometimes, because that can get flip-flopped. And especially I would say to somebody who's not married yet, if it's a case where the woman may make more than the man makes, I think there has to be even more clear expectations around that. And previously I never had those conversations. And I think having those moving forward is very helpful, just to say, okay, if you take really how much you make and how much I make, then how do we want that to even out? Is it going to be, we want to be 50-50? Does one person want to say, my income will go towards this and the other person say mine go towards play or wealth building or whatever? I just think it all comes back to communication, but having those conversations around those things up front, and then it doesn't have to be a fight later.
Yeah, absolutely. Or a place of contention that causes the marriage to break. And I think so much of the time, finances are such a huge reason people divorce or split up in the first place, that, it's, we can think love's going to cure it all, but at the end of the day, it's really not. You might need to get that cleared away. And I think because we always assume that especially when you're in love and you're kind of, your eyes are kind of covered, you think you have this. It's like when you hire somebody or you put somebody together as a partner on a team, you have this expectation of what you believe they're going to do. And it may not even be remotely close to what they think they're going to do or what they're going to do. And again, look for evidence because, I don't think anybody who's, they changed too drastically. I think you could find, if you did enough searching, you could find that this person, their habits and disciplines and their beliefs were already there. You just chose not to see them, or I would choose not to see them.
Mm-hmm.
And think, so I think you ask questions, you ask deep questions, and you really reflect on things. And then the other thing is, you just ask yourself, how can I win at this anyway? What are my options? I could hire out all those duties at home. And that way I'm spending time with my person. What's their love language? Part of what really may be rubbing the person is what I'm doing in real estate is not even remotely allowing me to do what their love language is. If it's quality time, if I'm sitting there doing all the chores and those kind of things. So I think just really getting clarity around, there are other options. And if one's not working, if the spouse isn't going to help or isn't helping with the domestic stuff, what are some of the other options I have? Maybe it's hire some of that out. We believe at our house, no job too small to subcontract. I would rather Jimmy don't even try to fix anything, call somebody. And even though I grew up with dad and brothers, or had dad and brothers that actually, they were in construction, I don't expect him to do it just because of that. And sometimes I think we do whatever we saw our parents do or our father do, we think our husband's going to do. And that may not be how they're wired or who they are.
That's such a good point. That's so true.
I remember Keller saying one time when John asked him, Dad, why are you doing chores on Saturday? He said, well, let me just tell you, son, your mother grew up and you did farm chores. And he said, I figured out I want your mother to be happy. And so the way for her to be happy is I get up and do a few farm chores every Saturday. And so I kind of laugh at that because I'm sure not any of them. But again, it's deciding what's important to that person and maybe getting some clarity around that. But I do believe real estate is a tough business, even when you do have support. But be careful and don't look at people who have a spouse in the business and think for whatever reason they got it better or easier.
Yes.
They just have different issues.
Yeah.
And so, you find what you're looking for. If you're looking for people, there are plenty of women and men out there who are doing real estate, maybe without the support that you think they have.
Yeah.
So you could probably find those and figure out, how are they doing it anyway?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So we're kind of out of time on this topic. Is there anything you think we missed or that we should have maybe hit on with this? Or
I don't know. I don't think so. The only thing that's coming to my mind is that, and I did want to say this morning at church, it was really good. And the pastor talked about, you can't serve two masters, and how sometimes that can be money, or it can be your job, or it can be, your career, or it can be whatever it is, that your TV show, whatever it is that you want to serve. But he told this story. He said that he was so excited about, when he was becoming the pastor of this new church, and that he and his wife were in the car one day. And he said, I thought we had like a perfect marriage. We would, we were pastors' kids. And he said, and his wife looked at me and said, oh no, they were coming back from vacation. And he said, she looked at him and said, man, I wish you didn't have to go to work tomorrow. And he said, I know it's always hard to come back from vacation. And she said, no, I really wish you didn't have to go to work tomorrow. And he said, well, what do you mean? Tell me more. And he said that during the car ride home, she kind of opened up and said, I feel like the church is your master. Like you're serving the church more than you are serving like our family or me or even God. And so he said he had to do some really self-reflection around that, because he thought, I'm doing my job, I'm serving the church. She saw that as, that's your master, and you forgot everything else. So the only thing that I would say that I thought of after hearing that story this morning is sometimes I think when this business can be really easy to just all in, and that's all you focus on.
Oh my gosh, so true.
Oh, I mean it, and that can be a really negative thing if that's the only master that you're serving. So I would just say be aware of that, because this is just an easy career line or line of work. I feel like to get just 100% immersed 24/7.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great point. And sometimes your spouse may not be even saying anything about it, but at the end of the day, it may be eroding your marriage. It may be
they're feeling it.
Yeah, it may be a conversation that needs to be had that's not being said, that's eroding that marriage away. So that makes me think I am going to teach Fierce Conversation in Indianapolis on March 12th. So if anybody resonates with this and you really feel like, I'll do it sometime later in the year also in Louisville. I've been requested to do that too. But if you feel like maybe learning how to have some of these conversations with a spouse who's not as supportive, I would say that's a great place to start. Quantum Leap is the next place, and I think we have that coming up. I don't know the date, but maybe you do, Dana.
I don't have it right in front of me, but I know it's in June. So we can link it.
Yeah. So I would say let's try to plug into either or both of those and see if we can't get your spouses there at the same time, and let's get everybody on the same page. And let's save marriages, Dana.
Yeah, sounds good. Those are two good ones to do that with.
Awesome. So remember, if you have a question, and I want to thank Sarah for submitting this question to us. We really, really appreciate it. But if you have a question, submit it to us at info@everything life and real estate. And if you want to be a guest on our podcast and have Dana and I help you with a situation, opportunity, or challenge, again, just submit your name to us and as much detail as you possibly can about your situation and what you got going on. And the thing is, the more you tell us, the more we're going to be able to dive into it and help you on the topic. So sometimes people assume we know all the details and they leave a few out. So we have to assume about a few things.
Yeah.
So anyway, and the best thing you can do if you like our podcast is be sure and subscribe, number one. And then number two, be sure and share it with somebody that you feel like might get some value out of it. And that's the best compliment that you can actually give us, is a referral to a great friend so that they can listen also. So I just want to say thanks for joining us today. And Dana, I'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good. Talk to you then.
Be sure to subscribe for more business strategies and tactics to inspire you to live an abundant real estate life. Don't forget to rate and review so we can bring you the best content. Find this and other valuable information at everythinglifeandrealestate.com.